Hi guys, welcome to the read aloud portion of 910 this week. Just like the last one, you guys have the option to either listen to me read it to you out loud and hopefully follow along in your books while you do so, or if you are more of an independent reader, you can make sure you just get the pages done on your own time. Either way works for me. I just want to remind you once again, you also have a small reflection activity to go along with this reading. This time it's only one single journal prompt as opposed to the 4-3-2-1 journal that was last week. So please don't forget to do that along with your other assignments for your at-home portion of work this week. Here we go. All classes left off on page 127. We are in the midst of September 11th. Let's continue. September 11th, 2001, 5:30 a.m., Los Angeles, California. On the other end, 3,000 miles away, right at the beginning, at least we're getting it over with, guys. On the other end, 3,000 miles away in New York City, a phone was ringing and ringing, but no one would answer. Come on, pick up, Mom, pick up. Amy had set her alarm so she could reach her mom before her mom had called her, before her mom had left for her meeting. She wanted to tell her everything. Tell her about her first day, about how she met one nice girl and one mean one, about gym class, you wouldn't believe what the gym teacher's name is, and about math and lunch period. She would have to bring a snack from now on, she would inform her mom. She wanted to say that she was sorry. She was sorry for being rude on the phone and pretending that she couldn't hear Mom. She was sorry that she'd had a horrible day, but she shouldn't have taken it out on her mother. She wanted to tell her mom how much she had just missed her and that she couldn't wait for her to get back. Though she might not want to share how she thought her mom and dad were getting divorced, even if all that had been cleared up last night at the restaurant. It was a weekday, Monday, but Amy's dad had wanted to take her out to a nice dinner. Amy glanced across the menu to the prices as she was picking what she might want to eat. It was expensive. She ran her fingers over the real tablecloth and noticed napkins were cloth too. Why did we come to such a fancy place? Amy asked her dad from across the table. What, this place? Her dad joked. Well, for my special little girl, why not? Suddenly, Amy felt sick. Was this going to be the big announcement? Were her parents getting a divorce? Was that why they were here at this expensive restaurant? That's how it always happens in the movies. The dad and his daughter, the china plates, the shiny glasses of water, maybe even a Shirley Temple with a 2 red cherry, and then he breaks the bad news. But what about Mom? Isn't Mom your special girl? Amy blanched, her insides wrenched up into a knot. Amy's father looked at her. He tipped his head and sort of crinkled his brow. What's this all about, honey? What's wrong? Amy felt tears burning behind her eyes and that sharp knife-like twinge in her throat that always signaled a flood of tears. But she held them back. They were so much. There was too much. At the same time, she didn't want to go back to school tomorrow without knowing. She needed to know the truth about her parents once and for all. Are you and Mom splitting up? Amy heard herself asking. Her father dropped his menu. It clattered on the plate. He looked hard at Amy. No, Amy, not at all. Why would you even ask that? So Amy told her dad about her first day of school. Vanessa, Bridget, Tom Cruise, and Ryan Felipe. She had never heard her father laugh so hard in public. I'm sorry, Amy, her dad composed himself. I didn't mean to make light of it, but no, your mom and I are not getting divorced. We love each other very much, and we love you. Boy, did that sound suspicious. Her dad must have read her face. Seriously, Amy, stop it, he told her. You're just going to have to believe me. Your mother and I have never talked about it. Not ever. Not once. Amy took a big drink of water. Then who's Chris? She asked. Chris, her dad said. From your mom's office? Chris Wiseman? She's your mom's new boss. Why? She? When her appetite returned, Amy was able to eat everything she'd ordered, salad, steak, French fries, and dessert. She ate like she hadn't eaten in days when in fact she hadn't eaten in one whole day. Food never tastes as good when you're really hungry. It was pitch black at 5:30 in the morning in Los Angeles, but the sun would be up in Manhattan. Her mother would be getting ready for her big meeting at whatever it was building. She would be all dressed in her gray suit, black high heels, which Amy had put her stamp of approval on, maybe putting on another coat of mascara. She might even be making her bed in the hotel. Amy smiled. Her mom was like that. Amy held the phone to her hand, sitting up in bed and listening to the ringing. Come on, Mom. Come on. Pick up already. Please, please, please. I just miss you so much, Mom. Just pick up. September 11th, 2001, 8:14 a.m., Brooklyn, New York. An unexcused absence meant detention, but for some reason the principal decided to give Sergio a second chance. Possibly Sergio was still riding the wave of his math award, giving the school a good name. Or maybe it was because everyone deserves a second chance. The principal had called him into her office first thing that morning, but Sergio, next time. She sat across from him behind a desk piled with papers and envelopes, files, apparently. She had a lot of work to do. Still, she was nice about the whole thing. Next time I can't cut you any slack. Don't miss school again, Sergio. I don't have to tell you. Showing up already puts you ahead of the rest. Yes, ma'am, Sergio nodded. I won't. I will. I know. Okay, then get to class. Oh, and Sergio. She stopped him just as he got to the door to her office. I hope whatever you had to do yesterday without your grandmother's permission was well worth it. I hope it wasn't any kind of trouble. If you are in any kind of trouble, you know you can come and talk to me. I know that, Sergio said. It wasn't trouble, and it had been worth it. Spending the day with Gideon. Sergio thought about yesterday all the way down the hall. He was even wearing one of the new t-shirts that Gideon had bought for him. Gideon had said it was a payment for saving that guy's life, and it was the least he could do. And then he offered to take Sergio to lunch. They had sat across from each other in a booth at the diner, and Sergio's grandmother hadn't been happy about the call from Gideon's cell phone. She wasn't happy that Sergio had missed school, but whatever Gideon told her must have meant something. When Sergio got on the line, she was calmer. She said that she wasn't going to cover for him at school, but she wouldn't punish him either. And he just had to be back home by dinner. I didn't do anything, Sergio said, and I doubt that guy would have died anyway. He probably had a hemorrhage, a bleed in his brain, that you couldn't see, Gideon said. He might have died. You wouldn't believe some of the things I've seen. Last year we pulled a young girl from a car after an accident up on the West Side Highway. She lost control and hit a pole and then a wall, barely any damage to the car. Or to her. She hit her head in just the wrong way, I guess. She looked like she was sleeping. But she wasn't? She wasn't. Gideon shook his head from side to side, slowly, as if he was feeling it all over again. Sergio had ordered a chocolate milkshake, Gideon vanilla, and they just talked. Who gets chocolate? I'm guessing your son? The waitress said. She stood at their booth, holding up 2 large canisters, both dripping with condensation from the cold ice cream inside. Gideon looked at Sergio. He's not my dad, Sergio said. But yeah, the chocolate's mine. Well, you two look alike, she set the shakes down. They did, in a way. Maybe in that way that white people think all black people look similar. But then, again, they both poured their shakes into their respective glasses, then lifted the metal canisters to their mouth, drinking down the leftovers first. And then again, there was a kind of facial likeness between them, a shade of skin color. Sergio found himself looking at Gideon, watching him, listening. When he looked down at his own hand, he saw his fist clenched like it always was, and he let it unfurl. Gideon wanted to know about the math award. He seemed interested and impressed. You can do anything, Gideon told him, anything you want with your life. Maybe I want to be a fireman, Sergio bit into his burger. Fireman, huh? You could do that, Gideon said. I'd be proud to work next to you one day. Or a doctor. Gideon nodded like he didn't think that was strange at all. Now sitting in class, Sergio looked up at the clock over the door, at the white face, at the black minute hand which moved unbelievably slowly until another 60 seconds had gone by. It clicked into its place, locked, and the first school bell rang out. 6 hours more and he'd be free again for the day. It was 8:44 exactly, and Sergio knew where he would be going right after school. He could look out the window and see Lower Manhattan, the financial district, where he knew Gideon's station house was. Gideon had told him to come by any time to the firehouse. If they weren't on call, all the guys would be there, and Sergio could even hang out. Gideon would introduce him around and show him the station. "If it's okay with your grandma," Gideon said. "I've always wanted a little brother. Oh, and hey, if it's okay with you." Sergio was already dreaming about it. He could barely listen as his teacher droned on about something. For the first time in a long time, he felt an eagerness for the day ahead. 120 seconds clicked by. Flight 11, a commercial airliner carrying 81 passengers and 11 crew members, which had been hijacked shortly after taking off from Boston's Logan International Airport, flew directly into the North Tower of the World Trade Center and exploded. Someone standing at the window started rambling about a dark mushroom of smoke rising from across the river, and the bell, without any awareness of what was going on, rang for first period. September 11th, 2001, 8:54 a.m., Columbus, Ohio. Flight 77, with 58 passengers and 6 crew members on board, on its way to Los Angeles International Airport, deviated from its course, turning south directly over Ohio, where 35,000 feet below, Nahid was in language arts class, listening to Virginia Whitworth give her book report on The Outsiders. "Oh, I read that book," Nahid whispered to no one in particular. "I loved it." But then Nahid hardly heard the rest of Virginia's report. She was working out in her mind what she was going to say to Eliza and how she would make things better. Instinctually, she reached up and pulled down her headband and adjusted her veil. It was her thinking cap. Nahid knew that she would never get anyone to stop teasing Eliza, but she herself could be nicer. She could be a friend to her, and maybe that would help. It was the right thing to do, and the truth was, nobody was going to stop being Nahid's friend just because she was Eliza's friend. She hoped. The bell rang as Virginia was finishing, but the teacher made everyone wait until she had given the homework for tomorrow, which meant they all had 25 seconds less time to get to their next class. Today was Tuesday, and it was a B week, which meant a double period of science, which meant Nahid could start implementing her making amends plan right away. Eliza would be in class, and today, Nahid had taken her science book with her, so she would be on time. But when she had gotten there, nothing looked right. A bunch of kids were bouncing around, some were standing at the back of the room, but no one was sitting down. It was like the lunchroom on a Friday afternoon before school vacation when the cafeteria monitors weren't paying attention. In the far corner, the television was on, and Mrs. Salinger was staring at it, with her back to the classroom. Sure, sometimes they watched videos in science, but today they were supposed to continue working on their theories and experiments. And since when did Mrs. Salinger let things get out of control? She didn't even turn around to yell at the boys who were playing with the Bunsen burners. Eliza was standing at her desk, facing the wrong way, towards the back of the room, not moving. Nahid had never seen her so still and so quiet. A few more kids went to stand next to Mrs. Salinger and stare at the TV, but Mrs. Salinger didn't seem to notice anything but the screen. This wasn't like her at all. It looked as if the television was turned to the news channel. The CNN Live logo was stamped across the bottom, but that was all Nahid could see. She always hated the news. Why was everyone watching it? And why were we so quiet about it? But now was a good time as any to talk to Eliza with all this freedom, with nobody paying attention. "Hey, Eliza, can I talk to you for a minute?" Nahid started. She might not get another chance. "Something terrible has happened," Eliza said. She looked upset, but then again, Eliza got frantic if her pencils weren't lined up. "I know," Nahid said, "and about that, I am so sorry. So why don't I make it up to you and you sit with us, at lunch today?" Eliza took her eyes away from the television. "Really?" Her face brightened. Nahid nodded. "Hey, that was easy. It actually felt good." "Really?" she said. "Okay, that's enough. Everyone back to their seats," Mrs. Salinger suddenly yelled out. Nahid looked around the room. Mrs. Salinger had turned off the television, but the kids who had been watching it didn't move. Something was wrong. Maybe that's what Eliza had meant when she said something terrible has happened. She'd been watching the news. Now Nahid felt silly, but when she turned to ask Eliza what had happened, Mrs. Salinger preempted her. "No more talking," she ordered. "Take out your work. This has nothing to do with us." What didn't? Mrs. Salinger repeated it as if trying to convince herself. This has nothing to do with us. September 11th, 2001, 5:31 a.m., Los Angeles, California. The phone rang so many times. Amy was amazed. Her call hadn't gone to voicemail yet. Hello? Hello? She thought she heard the connection click. Someone answered, but there was a lot of noisy interference. "Mom?" Amy said. Her bedroom was dark and she whispered quietly, as if she might be waking her sleeping stuffed animals, each one from another time in her life when things were less confusing. Barney the purple dinosaur had been given to her by Grandpa Jerry, the giant soft rabbit missing a nose she had since she was a baby. She didn't even know the woman who had given it to her when she was born, an old college friend of her mom's. There was a smiling Bart Simpson doll with a hard plastic head and soft arms and legs. Sorry guys, thought I had to sneeze there. She had gotten that from her dad when she was in second grade. She had never watched the show, but she loved that doll. Bears and camels and an imaginary creature sewn from patchwork scraps, all holders of hugs and kisses, friends and family soaked into the fabric, the fur, and the stuffing. The ringing had stopped and the static coming from the other end got louder. "Mom, are you there?" Amy looked at the clock radio glowing next to her bed. 5:31 in the morning. It would be 8:31 in New York. Her mother's meeting would be starting soon. She'd be frazzled and rushed, and she wouldn't be able to listen. But if Amy could just get a word out, if they could connect for 1 second. "Mom!" Static. And then, "Amy? Amy, what are you doing up so early? Is everything all right?" Relief washed over her body, hearing her mother's voice coming from a whole nother continent and 3 time zones right into Amy's bedroom. Everything was going to be all right. "Hey, Mom, I'm fine. I'm just sorry about yesterday. I didn't mean to hang up and be so rude. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to." "Oh, Amy, I'm mad. I'm just there. I know there's something on, and I want you to tell me all about it when you've been hurting and I haven't been there." Almost every other word was lost, and then there was static again. "Mom, I can't hear you." "Can you hear me now?" "Mom, it's just that. But sweetie, I'm running so late this morning. I'm supposed to be downtown by 9 and I haven't even left the hotel yet." "Mom, I just wanted to ask you a question. One thing. 10 minutes to Trade Center and up to their offices. Oh, what floor are they on again? My car service. Come morning. To grab a cab." Amy could hear her mother's voice a little better now against the sounds of New York City streets, horns blaring and sirens rising in pitch and zooming away, but it was clear that her mom couldn't hear her at all. "Sweet, I'll call you when I promise. Taxi?" "Mom, but Mom." She gave up trying to shout to the phone, and her mom was so far away. It wasn't only the miles, it was everything that had come between them. Amy started to cry, again, just like last night. "Amy?" All Amy could manage was to sob. When she had started crying, she couldn't stop, and her mother couldn't hear her. A man's voice broke through the buzzing. "Sure, lady. Where to?" "Never mind," Amy's mom was saying to someone. "Sorry, what?" "Yes. Oh, sure. You take the cab. I need to talk to my daughter." "Yes, I'm sure. I'll meet you back at the hotel later." Amy heard the car door slam, the reception was better, and the static suddenly lifted. Her mother's voice was clear. "Now, talk to me, Amy. I'm going to go back in the lobby and sit down. Can you hear me?" "Yes, but..." Amy sniffed hard and gulped it down. "But what about your meeting?" "I'll make something up. They can do without me," her mom said. "But you, my Emily, I can't do without you." September 11th, 2001, 9:53 a.m., Brooklyn, New York. When a second plane, Flight 175, with 56 passengers and 9 crew members on board, flew directly into the south tower of the World Trade Center. There was no mistaking what was happening, and nothing was going to keep the older kids in school. Flames were leaping from the two towers now, reaching into the blue sky. Gray smoke formed a giant cloud that hung over the buildings and expanded outward like paint slowly being spilled onto an empty canvas. Sergio could hear sirens coming from all directions, wailing and screaming out, and he thought immediately of the firemen. It was an old and far away, but a very familiar feeling of loss that leaped into his gut. The kind of feeling that had no words, that his body had held on to, even if his memory had not. Gideon would be running towards the fire, running in to help, heading directly towards that mess, running right into it. That's what we're trained to do, he had told Sergio just yesterday. Sergio stood at the window of his classroom with the rest of the kids, hoping to see what was going on. He didn't want to feel this dread that was building up inside of him. He didn't want to be scared, but he was. He could remember Gideon's face, his expression calm, but commanding voice in the subway. How did he do that? How did he stay so focused with all the mess going on around him? Sergio turned away from the window. The teacher hadn't shown up yet. Maybe she wasn't coming. Maybe he should go somewhere, like everyone else in the halls. Did Gideon have no fear, or did he just push it away? There was fear in the classroom now, and it fed off of itself, from one body to another, like heat shimmering off asphalt in the summer, undefined and blurry. No one knew what was happening, but somehow everyone now knew that it was something bad, something really bad. The halls were filled with kids and teachers. Parents were starting to show up, running through the building, grabbing their children, crying. Grown-ups were crying. Then the principal came over to the loudspeaker, dismissing all the upper grades and telling everyone to go directly to their homes. Girls were crying in the halls, and boys were too. Their voices carried into the classroom. A plane had accidentally hit one of the twin towers. Accidentally? And then another one? Accidentally? Some kids said they had seen it happen. It was a bomb. It's an attack. It was a plane. It flew directly into the side of the building. That's no accident. Sergio walked over and turned on the television in the back of the classroom. He started flipping through every station. Or was someone doing that, and he was just standing, just watching the screen? It didn't matter. He struggled to stay inside his body, to focus and push away the fear. One of the TV reporters said there were giant, gaping holes in the sides of the twin towers, like a cartoon explosion. Someone else said it was the end of the world. Fear was like a cloud itself, threatening to suffocate him. Within minutes, it seemed, an hour, it seemed two, the school had started to empty out. Classroom doors flung open, glass windows cracking. The world was on fire, fierce, yellow, angry red. The sky over Manhattan was gray with soot and a halo of blue and shroud of black. 56 minutes after the second plane had crashed, with only a few kids, Sergio being one of them, still left in the classroom, staring out the window, there was a horrible, cracking, popping, bang, 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 booming sound that lasted forever. He can hear it in his head like a crack in the fourth dimension, a fracture of the Euclidean plane. Sergio could watch it happening on the television. Oh no, it's going down, the whole building, it's going down. Someone in the room started counting the seconds, as if no explosion could last that long. It couldn't, but it did. 7, 8, 9, 10, crackling, popping, exploding, bang, 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 as if each floor was falling onto another, and when it finally ended, there was nothing but smoke. No red, no yellow. I'm getting out of here. Holy crap, that's it for me. There were no thoughts left to think. Sergio's body was followed by the rest of the students into the chaos. Everyone started pouring out into the streets, some running away, and some headed, like lemmings, into the sea towards the waterfront. Running towards the river, trying to get a better look, kids were climbing fences and scaling fire escapes of strangers' houses just to see what they could see. And from all angles, from in front and behind, came the wailing sounds of sirens. First responders, Gideon had called them, the firefighters and police that arrived first on a scene and took care of the wounded. We were the ones who have more training in the medical emergencies, Gideon had explained. Not as much as EMTs, but more than your average first aid course. You know what I mean? Sergio had nodded, like you did with that guy on the train. Exactly. It was clear that the world was about to blow apart, and if it hadn't already, and suddenly nothing else mattered but getting home. It was a primitive instinct, a drive, a need to find family no matter how far. Get home. Sergio started to make his way back to his apartment, and his grandmother would be at work by now. So should he turn and head that way? Or would she be making her way to him? Would she be running home too? Home. He knew he should run home, and he listened to his footsteps hitting the sidewalk pavement, loud thumping, one after another, in rhythm with his breathing, like he was inside of a wind tunnel. All sounds were exaggerated, and the world was screaming out loud. Ambulances sped by on the street, one after another, after another. His grandmother had taught him to pray, but he had long since stopped doing that when she wasn't around. What good was it? But there was too much noise, too much panic and fear spilling into the streets and rising up into the sky. Sergio ran, and he prayed. For his grandmother to be home when he got there, for himself to know what to do, and for Gideon to be safe. Police sirens were wailing, and cops were not paying one bit of attention to all the black teenagers loitering outside of the school, running down the sidewalks and into the middle of the street. Fire trucks, and more fire trucks, all speeding towards the bridge in a blur of red and white, a deafening, endless ribbon. Heading towards the bridge, heading directly to the chaos, into the flames and sirens and smoke. Gideon was heading right into it. Sergio was running the other way. But what else could he do? Get home and hope that home was still there. There were a few boys from his school leaning over a metal fence and straining their necks. Sergio called up, "What do you see?" "Oh, God," one of the boys kept saying, and nothing more, nothing else. Oh, God. Sergio felt his feet leave the ground. He hoisted himself up, and he gripped the metal bar at the top of the fence. "Hey, make room!" The boys scrambled all over, and Sergio positioned himself as high as the fence as he could. From his vantage point, it was a clear view directly across the river into where the World Trade Center had once stood. Sergio could see people, hundreds of people streaming off the island of Manhattan, and they were all white. Even the black folks were white, white like powder, white like ghosts, running in slow motion, walking across the bridge into Brooklyn. White with the ashes of 1,000 dead, covering their faces, their bodies, covering the earth. September 11th, 2001, 9:41 a.m., Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Will knew that he would have to ride by Claire's house on his way to school, which was most likely the reason he veered his bike to the side and took a little rest, hoping that by the time he got back on, she would be long gone. Then he wouldn't have to face her. Not just yet. In fact, skipping school entirely seemed like it might not be a bad idea. And for that reason, for the fact that this day was probably the most perfect day Will could ever remember, even if he had ruined what might possibly have been his only chance at being with a girl that he really, really liked. Will lay face up in the grass, his hands folded under his head. There wasn't a cloud in the sky to dream about or make up stories about, but Will dreamed anyway. And as often as he did, he imagined that his dad was still alive, that it had all been some horrible mistake, a mix-up in the hospital, mistaken identity. His dad would come home one afternoon after a really long haul gig, and he would wonder what all the hubbub was about. Wouldn't that be funny? No. That's why they had to have the funeral. The dark suit, the service and the burial, all those people, all that food. Will shook his head back and forth in the grass, shaking the thoughts out of his mind. Because there had to be something more than either of the fantasy or the horror. There had to be, and there was. Will closed his eyes and let himself just remember his dad throwing him across his parents' king-size bed, pretending to wrestle, doing a Jerry Lawler pile driver, and then a Sergeant Slaughter cobra clutch. Then his father would pretend to get tired or pretend to make a bad choice, leaving his arms exposed or his back wide open, and Will would bounce across the mattress, acting out a Randy Savage elbow drop off the top rope, and it would take his father all the way down, where his dad would flop around and beg for mercy. For the longest time, for years after, he should have known better, and Will really believed he'd won. Sort of. A smile grew across his face as the warm memory took hold in his mind and then his whole body, until Will felt the heat of the sun disappear and he heard a voice directly over his head. "What's up there, William Rittenhouse?" It was Claire. Will jumped to his feet and his sneakers got tangled under him for a long second, but he made a swift, semi-graceful recovery and stood upright. "What are you doing here? How did you find me?" She pointed back towards the road. "I recognized your bike." "Oh." It took Will a little while to put it together. "But why aren't you in school?" "I decided I needed a personal day." Claire smiled conspiratorially. "So I told my mom I wasn't feeling well, and when she went to work, well, it was so beautiful out, you know what I mean? And then I saw your bike here." She waited a beat and added, "I was hoping I'd see you." "Me?" Without saying so, they both started walking back towards the road. They picked up their bikes, but neither one of them got on. "We're probably going to get in trouble," Will said, pushing his bike forward. "Well, you will for sure," she laughed. Will knew this was exactly what he'd hoped would happen yesterday when he asked Claire to ride bikes after school. Almost 24 hours and a couple of embarrassing moments later, but here they were. It was not hard to feel excited but calm. Calm but happy. It felt right. "I'm sorry I was so mean to you last night," Claire said. They rolled their bikes over the gravel, not in any hurry. "It's okay. I deserved it." "No, you didn't," Claire said. "You were just fooling around with your friends. I guess I just—" He didn't want to hear her feel sorry for him. He didn't want her to like him because his father had died and she thought he was fragile. He wanted her to like him. Claire went on, "I guess I just like you, that's all." Claire took Will's hand and they walked that way for a long time without saying anything. Will wanted to reach out and stop their bikes from rolling. He wanted to lean over and press his lips against Claire's because he knew hers would be soft and warm and that it would be perfect, like the crystalline blue sky over their heads, and the gentle wind that cooled them, and the expansive green lawns that he had known all his life. And it was, just like that, when he kissed her. Neither one of them had heard the discordant sound of a jet engine coming near until it roared right above their heads. Then a huge flash of silver reflected in the sun. They both looked up to see a plane flying on its side so near, so close to the tops of the trees, that later both Will and Claire would mention being able to see the metal rivets on the wings. And then it was gone. A few seconds later, at 10:03 a.m., the plane hit something so violently and with such force that it shook the ground. Windows wide open to the spectacularly beautiful fall day would slam shut in homes along Lambertsville Road and as far away as the high school. Tiles in the ceiling of the elementary school would shift like they were made of paper, and for weeks after, debris would be discovered scattered across nearby backyards, roped off with yellow police tape. Flight 93, with 37 passengers and 7 crew members on board, had left Newark 45 minutes late because of runway congestion. That gap of time might have allowed friends and family on the ground who had been watching the horrifying news from New York and Washington, D.C., to warn those on the plane of what most likely, though unfathomably, was about to happen. It was not, however, enough time to prevent the course of events, only to alter them, which the passengers and crew did bravely, even though it would cost them all their lives. The plane dug a trench more than 30 feet deep into the spongy earth of the old strip cuts on Skyline Drive, directly between 2 hushed, abandoned pieces of mining equipment. It scorched the pine trees standing by in witness, and it sent a plume of dark smoke up into the sky, charcoal black, into the robin egg blue of the once most perfect day. September 11th, 2001, 10:45 a.m., Columbus, Ohio. What was happening? Why? Parents had just started showing up to get their kids and take them home. Just a few at first, and then a few more. One girl from Mrs. Salinger's class got called down to the office, and another mom showed up right at the classroom door. She looked like she'd been crying, and she asked for her daughter, and they were gone. Something bad had happened in New York City, but why was everyone so upset? No one could really say. None of the teachers were interested in teaching anything, and after a while, it felt oddly like a snow day, an in-school snow day on the warmest, clearest, most beautiful day of the year. Nahid moved from one period to the next with the rest of her classmates who were mostly undisturbed and mostly glad not to be taking tests or giving reports or whatever they thought they were going to be doing that morning. No one was explaining what was going on until an announcement came over the PA that there was to be an entire 6th grade assembly in the library in 5 minutes. 7th graders were to report to the auditorium and 8th graders to the cafeteria. Immediately. Did you hear anything? Tommy came up next to Nahid as they were making their way down the hall towards the library. I'm not sure, Nahid said. I think it's about a bomb in New York City, Tommy said. It was a plane, another boy from their grade came up behind them. Mr. Nemirovsky let us have the radio on in math class, he said. It was a huge plane, and it was on purpose. That's a lie, Tommy said. That's not true. Oh, yeah? The boy kept walking forward, but looking back over his shoulder at them. Then why do you think we're having this big assembly? Just to hear about some random accident 1,000 miles from here? He nearly bumped into the line of kids waiting to file into the library. It wasn't New York. It was Washington, D.C., another girl told them. Either way, it was really far from here. At least they got out of class, and they were all standing here doing nothing, which was certainly better than having to go to PE. The nearly 200 6th graders poured into the library, and the teachers shouted out directions. Blue group sits here. Fill in these spots up front. Everyone on the floor. No pushing. Sit still and be quiet. Kids were talking, shifting around, and slowly making their way to the carpet. At the far end by the library office, a couple of boys were balling up paper and lobbing it over onto the other boys' heads, then ducking down and laughing. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary or too serious. Just a snow day in September, right? Nahid wanted to find Eliza. This would be a nice time to be nice. To sit with her and let Eliza know that she was serious about being her friend. But there were so many people, it was hard to make out anyone in particular. Nahid was scanning the room for Eliza, but she began to notice the teachers standing around the outside of the circle of students, their expressions solemn. They weren't chatting with one another or looking for unruly boys. They were preoccupied, as they had been all morning, waiting for the principal to start talking. Sit down now. It was Mrs. Salinger. Her face was strange, her makeup was smeared, and it looked like a scary Halloween paint. Everyone sit, and no talking. Nahid decided to sit down right where she was. It was okay. She'd seen Eliza later at lunch, and sitting with someone in the cafeteria was more of a statement anyway. Just a snow day in September, Nahid told herself again. The principal was standing at the front of the room, and one of the custodians was wheeling a podium across the floor. The teachers were still telling everyone to be quiet while the microphone was set up, and a loud screech from the amplifiers pierced the room. The principal began. I'm sure you are all wondering why we are having this unexpected assembly today. This is an unprecedented event, so there is really no, precedent for this. I mean to say, it is up to every school district to decide for themselves how to handle the events that have occurred. There was the normal pushing and whispering and not paying attention. But as I have always believed in treating you students with respect, it is my policy that you should be informed. I also believe that the incorrect information can lead to rumor and panic. But before I go on, I will first tell you that we have decided not to close schools today. The rest of the day will proceed on a regular schedule. I repeat, we will follow on a regular school schedule, and dismissal will be routine. However, after-school activities have all been canceled. The noise from the room lessened, and Nahid could feel her chest tighten. Maybe this wasn't a snow day, or a free day, or a broken septic system like one had closed school for a whole week last year. Something was definitely wrong. There have been 3 attacks on the United States this morning. Movements and the rustle of clothing, the tapping of feet, the ambient whispering suddenly stopped. One in New York City at the World Trade Center, one in Washington, D.C. on the Pentagon, and another somewhere in rural Pennsylvania. We are safe here. There suddenly wasn't enough air in the library for everyone to breathe. Nahid could feel it. She can see the principal talking and hear what he was saying, but there was nothing making sense. It was like he was an actor in one of those end-of-the-world movies. This wasn't real. There's nothing to be afraid of. Some parents have called the school and are on their way to pick up their children. If your parent is one of those, you will be notified in your classroom. Again, you will go to regular 5th period class. Thank you, and now your teachers will direct everyone back to their classrooms. And there will be no more discussions about this until further notice. As soon as the principal walked away from the podium, the noise level in the room rose like a boiling kettle that someone started to steam. Everyone began talking. A few girls started crying, like those few girls will always do. Now Nahid knew for sure what Eliza had been upset about in science and why Mrs. Salinger had snapped off the television, why parents were running to school to pick up their kids, but it still felt far away. There were things like this on the news all the time, weren't there? Bad things, scary things. Life wasn't a movie. It was going to be okay. Wasn't it? Nahid slowly stood with the rest of her class, uncertain of what she had just been told, voices rising up around her. My grandmother lives in Pennsylvania. An attack? What does that mean? My dad lives in New York. They probably went after all those secrets stored in the Pentagon. I bet they stole all our secret files and spies and stuff. No, I heard it was a bomb. It's not a bomb. If it was a bomb, we'd all be in those underground shelter places. It's no big deal. It's not like a war or anything. They always want to scare us with this stuff. And so on. The students started to shuffle back to their classrooms. The gym teacher let Nahid's class have a study hall, but no one was allowed to even whisper. Nahid took out her math work and started to concentrate, but by the end of the day, so many kids had gone home, and with each one leaving, another bit of information from the outside world had gotten left behind. Hijackers, the World Trade Center, fire. When the bell rang for dismissal, the remaining students poured out into the front of the school, and with no teachers to stop them, everyone was talking. The buses sat idling with their doors wide open. People jumping to their deaths, plane crashes, the White House evacuated. When was this end of the world movie going to be over? There was Eliza standing in line, waiting to step up onto her bus, and Nahid's plan for apologizing to her seemed 100 years in the past. It seemed like a silly speck of sand in the sandbox that were getting bigger and bigger with every frightful story that flew from parent to kid, from brother to sister, from friend to friend, from one kid to another. Air travel grounded, buildings collapsing. All at once, Nahid knew she had to get home. She had hurried along the sidewalk and found her own bus, number 15. I heard it was terrorists, the boy in the front of the line was saying. He sounded almost excited. Nahid couldn't see whom he was talking to. She could hardly hear above the sound of her own heart pounding. What do you mean, terrorists? Someone else asked. Nahid could hear her own exaggerated breathing inside her head like she was inside a wind tunnel. People were starting to push, to stand as close to one another as they could, backpacks bumping, everyone's feet taking little steps closer to the doors. Nahid felt the heat, the sun warming her hijab. She brushed away a band of sweat that formed on her brow, and she tried to calm herself. 3 more steps, and Nahid would be on the bus, that much closer to home. Just breathe. 2 more steps. She'd find a seat, and everything was going to be okay. It was Arabs. The voice rose from above the others. 1 more step. Yeah, you know, Muslims, the ones with those things on their heads. Nahid didn't get on the bus. It was just after 3. The sky was clear, quiet, and the bluest blue she'd ever seen. Nahid stepped out of line. She hiked her backpack up over her shoulder, took off down the access road towards the elementary school. Their school got out an hour after the middle school, and it was about a half-mile walk. She needed to find her sister. Alrighty, guys, that is the end of 9/11. When you guys come back and you see me in class, we are going to go ahead and finish the book completely, and then we're going to take our assessment. I'll go into more detail when you guys see me in person about that. We are going to hit the 1 year later and find out exactly how this story ends or does not end. We will see when I see you again. I want to remind you to complete your small journal prompt. Again, even though it's a journal, that does not mean you can use texting language or non-complete sentences. Make sure your thoughts are complete. Make sure you have formal language. After all, this is language arts class. Don't give me any URs or U's. Actually spell out the words. Thank you. If you need help, as always, reach out to me and I'll see you guys soon.